In Johannesburg, behind the iron gates of a luxury mansion, lived a man who once fooled an entire country, a man who moved billions through corruption, controlled networks across continents, and vanished from Czech police while sipping coffee in his own home. His name, Radovan Krejčíř, a man so wealthy, he tried to buy his way out of prison with over 100 million rand. So powerful, he influenced law enforcement, politicians, and criminals alike. So bold, he escaped custody through a hidden tunnel from right under the noses of the police. This isn't fiction. This is the real story of one of the world's most elusive underworld figures, whose shadow stretched from Europe to Africa. This is the shocking fall of Radovan Krejčíř, the ghost who refused to be caught. Rise of a Czech prince. While most of the country was trying to rebuild from political chaos, a child was born in a well-connected communist household. That child would grow up to become one of the most feared, most cunning, and most unpredictable underworld figures in modern European history. Radovan Krejčíř. From a very young age, Radovan was sharp, not just academically, but strategically. He wasn't the type of kid who played to win. He played to dominate. Teachers described him as clever, but overly ambitious. He didn't just want grades. He wanted leverage. His father, a former official in the communist regime, was strict, secretive, and highly influential. The household Radovan grew up in wasn't warm or playful. It was cold, powerful, and calculated. From dinner conversations to weekend meetings, everything revolved around status, connections, and survival in a system that changed its rules by the hour. Then came the Velvet Revolution of 1989. The Iron Curtain collapsed. The Czech Republic opened its doors to free markets, capitalism, and opportunity. But that opportunity came with confusion, chaos, and loopholes. To many, it was a fresh start. To Radovan Krejčíř, it was a playground. He moved quickly. By the early 1990s, he was already running several businesses: foreign exchange offices, real estate development, electronics importing. On the surface, he looked like a rising star in the new Czech economy. Young, confident, rich, and surrounded by expensive suits, luxury cars, and whispers of international deals. But behind the curtain, his operations were anything but legitimate. Radovan was running shell companies, fake businesses that moved money around like shadows in a dark room. He was forging documents, manipulating loans, and using his father's old communist connections to grease the right palms. His most infamous front was a company named Muscovite, a corporate ghost designed to push large sums through fake contracts and illegal tax claims. Banks began approving loans worth millions based on fabricated documents and non-existent assets. Radovan was turning paper into profit faster than investigators could read the first line. He wasn't just laundering money, he was transforming it, buying influence, bribing officials, and building a fortress of financial deception so complex that even auditors got dizzy. His empire wasn't violent, it was silent. Clean suits, clean hands, dirty books. By the late 1990s, Krejčíř had built an empire worth tens of millions of dollars. But while his businesses looked flawless on paper, Czech law enforcement had begun to notice the cracks. Mysterious transfers, vanishing loan recipients, offshore accounts in the Caribbean, all pointing back to one man, Radovan. He could feel the walls tightening, the pressure mounting. Investigators were closing in. But if anyone thought Radovan Krejčíř would simply wait for handcuffs, they didn't know who they were dealing with. Because for Radovan, the game was never about playing fair. It was about always staying 3 steps ahead. And when his moment came, he wouldn't run. He'd vanish. By the early 2000s, Radovan Krejčíř's name had become both mysterious and magnetic. No one could quite pin down how he had made his fortune, but everyone knew it was big. His assets stretched across borders: Swiss accounts, shell corporations in Cyprus, hidden properties in Prague. Behind his charming public image, a storm was brewing. Czech law enforcement had been quietly tracking him for years. The evidence was stacking up: tax evasion, forgery, suspicious banking activity, and dozens of secret business dealings with criminal undertones. It was finally time to bring him in. June 2005. It was a clear morning when Czech police surrounded Krejcír's luxurious villa in Černošice, just outside Prague. The operation had been planned for months, a coordinated raid by a special anti-corruption unit. Officers believed they were about to close one of the country's largest white-collar crime investigations. Inside the marble-clad villa, Krejcir greeted them with the kind of calm that only a man with a backup plan could possess. He wasn't hostile. In fact, he offered them coffee. As they began searching the home and preparing the arrest, Radovan smiled and politely asked if he could use the bathroom before they proceeded. They agreed. After all, what could he possibly do? The place was locked down. But Radovan had been preparing for this day for a long time. What the officers didn't know was that inside that bathroom, behind a decorative wall panel, was a hidden passage, a private escape tunnel built with the precision of an engineer and the paranoia of a man who never trusted anyone. By the time officers noticed he hadn't come out for several minutes, it was too late. Radovan Krejčíř had disappeared. Not into a crowd, not into the woods, but into thin air. He flipped through the tunnel, emerged in a nearby wooded area, and was whisked away in a getaway vehicle that had been waiting just minutes from the property. It was a move straight out of a thriller, bold, silent, and deeply embarrassing for the Czech state. The news exploded. Within hours, headlines read, "Businessman escapes police from his own bathroom. Where is Radovan Krejčíř? Czech Republic's most wanted man vanishes without a trace." The media went into a frenzy. Opposition leaders mocked the police. International agencies were alerted. Interpol issued a red notice. A global manhunt was now in motion. Behind closed doors, the Czech authorities were in crisis. How had one man outsmarted an entire task force? How had he known they were coming? Theories swirled. Did he have an inside man in the police? Was he tipped off by a politician? Or had he simply planned every detail with such precision that it didn't matter? What no one could deny was this: Radovan Krejčíř had turned from a suspected white-collar criminal into a national humiliation. But while the world was searching for him in airports and border towns, Radovan was already planning his next move in an entirely different continent. Johannesburg, South Africa, a city known for its gold mines and fast-paced life, was about to welcome a new kind of king. Radovan Krejčíř had arrived not in chains or in secrecy, but like a man on a mission. He had left behind the Czech Republic, where his name was infamous, and now he was ready to build something far greater, an empire in a land where rules could be bent with the right amount of cash, power, and fear. From the moment he landed, Krejčíř began spreading his influence like wildfire. He didn't hide. In fact, he lived large. Luxury cars, massive mansions in Johannesburg's wealthiest suburbs, armed guards, and a reputation that began to scare even the most hardened locals. He purchased a lavish home in Bedford View, a quiet upmarket suburb. But there was nothing quiet about his lifestyle. Surveillance cameras, electric fences, bodyguards armed to the teeth. It wasn't just a home, it was a fortress. It didn't take long for whispers to spread. This wasn't an ordinary foreign businessman. This man was dangerous. Krejčíř was smart enough to understand that in South Africa, brute force wasn't enough. You needed alliances, and he built them fast. Drug lords, rogue police officers, businessmen with shady pasts. They were all drawn to him like moths to a flame. He had what they wanted: money, fearlessness, and a cold ability to get what he wanted without ever blinking. He found himself tangled in South Africa's most dangerous underworld. Police officials suspected he had a role in drug trafficking rings and extortion networks. But pinning anything on him was a different story. His empire was like a spider web, one that caught many but never let anyone get close enough to the spider. Then came the case of Cyril Bika, a man many believed to be Krejcir's closest associate in the early days. Their relationship, however, didn't end with handshakes. It ended with whispers and fear. People began to notice a pattern. Anyone who crossed Krejcir or even mildly threatened his position seemed to disappear or suffer some horrible fate. The message was clear. Betrayal was not an option. He built a drug empire with links across continents. From South America to Eastern Europe, cocaine flowed through ports, cash flowed through banks, and Krejcir sat at the top like a cold, calculating emperor. One of the most shocking incidents came when investigators raided his Bedford View mansion. What they found was nothing short of terrifying. A torture chamber, weapons, and enough evidence to suspect he wasn't just involved in crime. He was orchestrating it like a symphony. Yet somehow, once again, he walked free. Witnesses vanished. Evidence weakened. Fear won. Despite being a foreigner, Krejcir manipulated the South African justice system like a puppet master. Bribes, threats, and alliances gave him more power than some politicians. He wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. But behind the gold-tinted glasses and bravado, his empire had cracks. The people around him were scared, not loyal. His enemies were growing, and in the shadows, authorities were beginning to connect the dots. Radovan Krejčíř had built himself a kingdom. But in South Africa's underworld, kingdoms never stay untouched forever. Intimidation and shadows. By 2007, Radovan Krejčíř wasn't just a foreigner hiding in South Africa. He was rapidly becoming a feared and powerful figure in the underworld. Johannesburg's criminal networks had no idea what they were welcoming into their ecosystem. Krejčíř arrived with money, international connections, and most dangerously, absolutely nothing to lose. At first, he played the game with charm. He dressed like a businessman, threw extravagant parties, and spoke eloquently about investments and international trade. But behind that polished mask, he was mapping out a silent takeover, with his Eastern European associates trickling into South Africa one by one. Whispers began to circulate in the shadows of clubs, casinos, and strip bars that a new boss was in town. Local gang leaders and drug barons started vanishing, or worse, cooperating. Some say he used threats, others believe he used cash, but most agree, if Krejcir came knocking, you either joined him or your future went dark fast. One by one, drug routes began changing hands. Arms dealers who once answered to local warlords now responded to new voices, Slavic ones, and anyone who even thought about stepping out of line was reminded, in chilling ways, that Krejcir had a long memory and a short temper. A former associate, later interviewed under witness protection, claimed, "You didn't say no to him. He didn't scream, he didn't raise his hand. He'd just stare at you and you'd know. If you crossed him, it wasn't just you. Your wife, your brother, your whole bloodline, gone." That was the kind of fear he built. Soon, his mansion in Bedford View, nicknamed the Fortress, became a symbol of absolute power. Surveillance cameras lined every inch of the property. Armed guards, imported luxury vehicles, and secret underground tunnels. Krejcir was preparing not just for survival, but for war. Authorities tried to keep watch. They bugged phones, tracked meetings, monitored his finances, but it was like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. Krejcir had insiders within law enforcement, immigration, even customs. Every move made against him was met with a counter long before it landed. Then came a series of quiet incidents. Small-time gang leaders found lifeless under mysterious circumstances. Warehouses going up in flames, vehicles exploding in public spaces. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no evidence, just chaos. And though no official charges ever stuck to him, People knew who was behind it. Need to make public displays. Krejcir operated like a shadow. You never saw him coming, and by the time you realized he was there, it was already too late. And yet, despite this reign of terror, Krejcir still smiled for the press. He posed in designer suits, spoke about investments, and even hinted at starting a political career. It was almost absurd, but no one dared laugh, because those who didn't last long. South Africa was no longer just a safe haven for Radovan Krejčíř. It was now his kingdom of fear, and he was just getting started. A phantom behind bars, Radovan Krejčíř now sits in Kagosi Mampuru 2 prison, one of South Africa's most secure correctional facilities. Gone are the tailored suits, the imported wine, and the entourage of fear. His life is limited to cement walls, scheduled meals, and isolation. Ironically, the man who once controlled cities from the shadows now has no control at all. What's perhaps most haunting is that Krejčíř, in whispers among inmates and corrupt guards, is still believed to be plotting something. Some say he dreams of another escape. Others say he's finally accepted his fate. But the truth, Radovan Krejčíř built an empire on fear, bribery, and illusion. He escaped once, ruled twice, but no man escapes forever. And in the end, even the most powerful can become prisoners of their own making. A shadow that once terrified nations now fades behind bars. And that is the story of Radovan Krejčíř, a man who rose from the back streets of Czechoslovakia to the dark underworld of South Africa, leaving behind a trail of secrets, wealth, and chaos. His life is a chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous figures don't wear masks. They wear suits, charm the world, and build empires of fear behind the curtains. What do you think? Was Krejčíř a criminal genius or a reckless man obsessed with control? If this story shocked you, intrigued you, or kept you on edge, then hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on notifications, because we have more real-life crime stories coming your way. Comment below with your thoughts, or let us know who you'd like us to cover next. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, the truth is often stranger than fiction.
The case may be closed, but criminology never sleeps. Like and subscribe to join Criminology and step deeper into the dark with us.